The air in the grand lobby of the Memphis Grand Hotel always felt different. It hummed with a quiet elegance, a blend of polished marble, hushed whispers, and the distant clink of silverware from the dining room. For Lily Evans, fresh out of hotel management school, it was more than just a hum. It was the symphony of her dreams. She landed her first big job, assistant manager, at one of the most prestigious hotels in the South. Every morning, she straightened her crisp uniform, pulled her hair back tightly, and reminded herself that this was it, her chance to prove she belonged. Today, however, the hum felt less like a symphony and more like a low, nervous thrum. Mr. Henderson, the general manager, a man whose stern expression rarely softened, had called an all-staff meeting. His voice, usually a deep rumble, was unusually tight. "All right, listen up," he'd begun, his gaze sweeping across the room like a drill sergeant's. "We have an important guest arriving next week. A very, very important guest." Lily's heart gave a little flutter. Important guests were exciting. They brought challenges, new experiences, and sometimes, if you were lucky, a story to tell. She glanced around. The veteran staff members, usually unflappable, had a certain tautness in their shoulders. Even Gus, the ancient maintenance man, with grease perpetually under his fingernails, had put down his rent. Mr. Henderson leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially, as if the very walls might be listening. "Elvis Presley is coming." Collective gasp, then a ripple of excitement quickly stifled by Mr. Henderson's raised hand. Elvis Presley, the king, in their hotel. Lily's mind reeled. She'd grown up listening to his records, watching his movies. He was a legend, a force of nature. To have him here in the very halls she walked every day, it was almost too much to comprehend. "Now I know what you're thinking, Mr. Henderson," continued, his eyes glinting. "Exciting. And it is, but with a guest of this magnitude come specific requirements, very specific." He paused for dramatic effect. "King has a particular demand, one that is, and I quote, non-negotiable." He let the words hang in the air, weighted with unspoken consequence. Lily leaned forward, intrigued. What could it be? A special type of pillow? A specific brand of soda? Exotic flowers? Celebrities were known for their quirks. His hotel room, Mr. Henderson finally declared, his voice dropping to an almost reverent whisper. "Not to be exactly, not 69, 68, 24 hours a day, from the moment he checks in until the moment he checks out." Then a few nervous chuckles from the back, quickly dying down under Mr. Henderson's icy glare. 68 degrees, that was it. Lily had expected something far more extravagant, something truly bizarre. This seemed simple. "Is that all?" she murmured, before she could stop herself. Mr. Henderson's gaze nacre. He then launched into a detailed plan, a team dedicated solely to his suite's climate control, regular checks, backup systems. Lily, being the newest assistant manager, was assigned to be the direct liaison for this particular, peculiar, and utterly critical task. "You, Lily, will be personally responsible for ensuring that room stays at 68 degrees. You will work with Gus, with engineering, you will troubleshoot, you will monitor, you will not sleep if that temperature so much as wavers by a decimal point. Do I make myself clear?" Lily felt a jolt of both terror and exhilaration. "Crystal clear, sir," she replied, her voice firmer than she felt. This wasn't just some mundane task. This was the task, the temperature of Elvis Presley's room. Her first major mission. It sounded almost like a fable, a legend in the making. Who knew that a simple number on a thermometer could hold so much weight, so much responsibility? As the meeting broke, and the other staff members began murmuring about the demands of the rich and famous, Lily walked towards the elevator, her mind already buzzing. 68 degrees. It seemed so innocuous, but she had a feeling it was about to become the most important number in her life. She found Gus in the dusty labyrinthine bowels of the hotel's mechanical room, surrounded by a symphony of clanks, whirs, and the low rumble of ancient machinery. He was a small, wiry man, perpetually clad in grease-stained overalls, his face a rodot of wrinkles that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. He smelled faintly of oil and old coffee. He looked up from a tangle of pipes, his eyes surprisingly bright for his age, blinking at her. "Ah, the new blood. Henderson sent you down here to learn the ropes, did he?" His voice was raspy, like gravel grinding together. "Something like that," Lily replied, stepping carefully around a puddle of murky water. "Put me in charge of the temperature for Mr. Presley's suite." Gus let out a sound that was somewhere between a chuckle and a cough. He wiped his hands on a rag that was probably once white. "The king." "Huh? Heard he's coming? And the temperature?" "Yes, the infamous temperature." "You've heard about it?" Lily asked, surprised. Shaking his head. "Rumors, whispers. Nobody ever thought he'd actually come to our hotel. Too old, they said, too finicky." He gestured vaguely at the pipes and ducts surrounding them. "This old girl ain't exactly state-of-the-art, you know. She groans. She leaks. She throws fits getting a precise temperature in one room. Day in, day out, that's like trying to teach a cat to sing opera." Lily's initial confidence. "Can it? We have a thermostat, can it?" "A thermostat, bless its heart, tells you what the temperature is. It doesn't always tell you what the system wants it to be. This building breathes. Lily, it expands and contracts with the heat. With the cold air, pressure changes. Sun hits one side. Wind whips the other. You got a lot of variables. This ain't just about setting a dial. It's about understanding the whole damn building. Its moods, its ailments." He tapped a particularly corroded pipe. Lily felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. "So, you're saying it's impossible?" Gus finally looked at her. A glimmer of something Lily couldn't quite decipher in his eyes. A challenge, perhaps, or a hint of respect for her naivete. "Nothing's impossible, Lily. Just some things are a whole lot harder than they look, especially when the king of rock and roll is involved." He winked. "But you seem like a determined sort. We'll see what you're made of, eh? Welcome to the circus." As Lily walked out of the mechanical room, the hum of the hotel lobby now sounded less like a symphony and more like a ticking clock. 68 degrees. It wasn't just a number. It was a looming, almost mythical challenge. And for the first time, Lily understood just how much was riding on it. The week leading up to Elvis's arrival felt less like a countdown and more like an escalating fever dream. The hotel, usually a picture of serene efficiency, buzzed with an almost frantic energy. Polished surfaces gleamed. Brighter flower arrangements seemed to burst with more vibrant color, and every staff member walked with a heightened sense of purpose, or perhaps dread. Lily, however, felt a particular kind of dread and purpose. She'd spent every spare moment in the royal suite, room 710, thermometer in hand, meticulously documenting temperature fluctuations. Gus, true to his word, had shown her the ropes, grumbling all the while. He taught her about the ancient controls, the delicate balance of the air handlers, the subtle sounds the system made when it was struggling. "Hear that groan?" Gus would ask, cocking an ear to the ceiling vent. "That's old Bessie complaining she needs a little coaxing." He'd then tap a pipe with his wrench, muttering something about the spirit of the ducks. Lily was amazed by his intuitive knowledge. While she focused on the digital readouts, Gus could practically feel the temperature in his bones. He explained how a gust of wind outside could drop the internal temperature by half a degree, or how a sudden burst of sunshine on the large windows could push it up. It was a living, breathing system, not a static machine. Plush, velvet furnishings, heavy drapes, a grand piano in the living area. It was exactly the kind of place you'd imagine Elvis Presley staying. Lily ran her hand over the cool marble of the bathroom counter, trying to imagine the king himself in this space. But her thoughts always circled back to the one overriding concern: 68 degrees. One afternoon, a thick dossier arrived from Elvis's management team. Mr. Henderson had handed it to Lily with a look that clearly said, "Don't mess this up." It was a comprehensive list of demands from specific food items. Fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches were, of course, prominently featured. To security protocols. But front and center, highlighted in bold, was the temperature requirement. Room temperature. Maintain 68 deg's 20 deg at all times. Non-negotiable. Any deviation will be addressed immediately. The words, "any deviation will be addressed immediately," sent that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What did addressed immediately mean? A stern phone call? A public complaint? The loss of her job? The very thought made her stomach clench. She placed a digital thermometer on a bedside table, then another near the windows, and a third by the door. She bought a small portable humidifier to combat the dry air that sometimes accompanied the AC. She even considered bringing in a small fan just in case the air needed more circulation, but decided against it. Too unprofessional. The challenge wasn't just setting it. It was keeping it stable. When the sun beat down in the afternoon, the room would creep up to 69.5 degrees. Lily would race down to the mechanical room, instruct Gus to lower the temp, then rush back up, heart pounding, watching the numbers slowly descend. At night, when the Memphis air cooled, it would dip to 67.5. Again, the frantic dash, the delicate adjustment. Gus, despite his grumbling, was a patient teacher. You don't just crank the peg, you turn it a hair. Listen, feel the vibration, too much, and you snap the string. He showed her how to adjust the dampers in the air ducts, how to monitor the pressure gauges, how to anticipate changes based on the weather forecast. One evening, as a sudden thunderstorm rolled in, dropping the outside temperature by 15 degrees in an hour, the room dipped to 67.2 degrees. Lily, who had been on a coffee break, received an alert on her specially configured pager. She sprinted back to the suite, her mind racing. Gus was already there, fiddling with a control panel in the wall. "Wind's blowing right into the vents," he mumbled without looking up, sucking out the heat. Lily watched, mesmerized, as he made a series of subtle adjustments, talking to the machinery as if it were a stubborn child. Slowly, agonizingly, the numbers on her thermometer climbed. 67.5, 67.8, 68.0. A wave of relief washed over her, so profound. "She?" Gus said, straightening up, a faint smirk on his face. "She listens sometimes." Lily knew then that this wasn't just a job, it was a battle, a personal quest. She was no longer just the assistant manager. She was a guardian of 68 degrees. Every degree, every decimal point felt like a personal victory or a crushing defeat. She started waking up in the middle of the night, checking her phone for alerts, half expecting to see a dreaded notification that the temperature had strayed. She knew other staff members probably thought she was going crazy. The front desk clerk, Martha, had given her a curious look when Lily had asked her about the precise angle of the sun's rays on the top floor at different times of day. Even Mr. Henderson, while commending her dedication, seemed to eye her with a mixture of approval and concern. But Lily didn't care. This was Elvis Presley. This was the Memphis Grand Hotel, and this was her responsibility. She imagined the king exhausted after a performance, walking into his perfectly temperate room, finding a sanctuary of ideal comfort. She pictured him sighing contentedly, perhaps humming a tune, totally oblivious to the silent, tireless vigil being kept by a young woman and an old maintenance man. The day before his arrival, the final preparations were made. The suite was immaculate, the fresh flowers arranged, the special brand of grape soda chilled, and most importantly, the room thermostat proudly displayed a steady, unwavering 68.0. Lily stood in the middle of the empty suite, a profound sense of anticipation washing over her. She'd done everything humanly possible. She'd consulted weather forecasts, studied blueprints, pestered Gus with endless questions. She'd practically moved into the mechanical room, sleeping on a cot. During particularly tricky nights, her entire world had narrowed to this one number. Tomorrow, the king would arrive. And tomorrow, her meticulous efforts would be put to the ultimate test. She took a deep breath, the air in the room feeling perfectly, serenely, blissfully cool. Exactly 68 degrees. For now, she just hoped it would stay that way. The morning of Elvis's arrival dawned bright and clear, promising a hot, sticky Memphis day, the kind that made the city feel like a giant steamy oven. For Lily, this meant one thing. The HVAC system would be working overtime, and her job, already an exercise in precision, would become a high-stakes balancing act. Elvis's entourage arrived first, a flurry of activity and hushed commands. Security personnel, personal assistants, and a couple of grim-faced bodyguards swept through the lobby, checking everything, eyes scanning every corner. Lily tried to look calm and professional as she escorted a senior aide up to the royal suite. "Everything is in order," she announced, gesturing grandly at the immaculate room. "And the temperature, as requested, is a consistent 68 degrees. She gestured to the digital thermostat on the wall, which indeed glowed a perfect 68.0. The aide, a tall, impeccably dressed man with an unreadable expression, merely nodded. Walking straight to the thermostat, pulled a small silver device from his pocket. A portable thermometer, Lily realized, her heart thumping. He held it up to the wall, then moved it to the center of the room, then near the windows. He studied the readings intently. Lily held her breath. Her own thermometer, strategically placed, all confirmed the 68.0. But what if his was different? What if there was some subtle calibration issue? What if acceptable? The aide finally stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "'Tisn't Sile. Did was enough." Lily felt a tremor of relief run through her. The next few hours were a blur of preparations. Luggage was brought up, arrangements finalized, and then the buzz began to spread. "He's here. Elvis is here." Lily watched from a discreet distance as a black limousine pulled up to the hotel's private entrance. A roar erupted from the street as a crowd of fans, somehow already gathered, surged forward, held back by a line of police officers, and then a glimpse, a flash of a dark suit, a glint of gold, the distinctive swoop of hair he was in. The king was in the building. Lily hurried back to the royal suite floor. Her walkie-talkie clutched in her hand. She heard Mr. Henderson's crisp voice. "All personnel maintain positions. Elvis Presley has arrived." Lily stationed herself near the service elevator on the 7th floor, a small digital thermometer on a cart beside her. She had a direct line to Gus in the mechanical room. Her eyes were glued to the numbers 68.0. Steady, perfect. Then, just as Elvis was reported subtly fleeting, 68.1. Then back to 68.2. "Gas," Lily hissed into her walkie-talkie. "Are you seeing this? The room's creeping up." "Hold on, darling," Gus's crackly voice replied. "She's just reacting to the extra bodies in the room, the door opening and closing. Give it a minute to stabilize." But it didn't stabilize. Within 10 minutes, it was 68.5. The sun beating down relentlessly on the windows seemed to be winning the battle. "Gus, it's 68.5. We're losing it." Lily whispered frantically, trying to keep her voice low so as not to alert any of Elvis's entourage. "Who might be nearby?" "I'm cranking it down a notch," Gus said. A few tense minutes passed. The number slowly, painstakingly, began to drop. 68.4, 68.3, 68.2. Suddenly, a loud grinding sound echoed up the ventilation shafts. It sounded like a giant metal beast choking. Lily winced. "What was that, Gus?" "Trouble, that's what?" Gus's voice was strained now. "The auxiliary pump just comped out. Old Bessie's got a cough. A bad one." "What does that mean?" Lily asked, her voice rising in panic. "It means the main chillers are working, but the air circulation ain't what it should be. We're gonna have trouble maintaining that steady flow. It's gonna fluctuate more." Just then, a member of Elvis's security detail emerged from the suite. He gave Lily a hard look. Is everything all right, ma'am? Mr. Presley feels a slight change in the air. Lily's heart drops to her stomach. He felt it. Already, it hadn't even gone above 68.5. This was impossible. Just a minor adjustment, sir, Lily stammered, forcing a smile. Our system is very precise. We're just ensuring optimal conditions. The security man narrowed his eyes, then nodded curtly and went back inside. Lily immediately called Gus. Gus! He felt it. We're in trouble. What can we do? I'm coming up, Gus said. This needs a hands-on approach. Meet me in the maintenance closet down the hall from his suite, the one with the access panel for the main vent. Lily rushed to the designated spot. Gus, surprisingly spry for his age, arrived moments later carrying a toolbox and a look of grim determination. All right, here's the deal, he whispered, fumbling with the lock on the access panel. The main vent to his room, the one that pumps the conditioned air in, has a manual damper. We can try to adjust it directly, bypass the wonky pump. Give it a little more. He swung open the panel, revealing a dusty, dark cavity filled with pipes and ducts. A faint hum emanated from within. Gus shone his flashlight. See that lever that controls the airflow? So we just push it? Lily asked, peering into the gloom. Not just push it, darling. You gotta finesse it too much, and he'll feel a draft. Too little and it'll still climb. It's a delicate balance, and it's gonna be constant. They began their strange, silent vigil in the cramped maintenance closet. Gus, with his years of experience, would listen to the faint hum, feel the subtle vibrations, and instruct Lily, all right, Lily, push it a fraction, just a hair. Lily, armed with a newfound, almost obsessive focus, would carefully nudge the lever. They'd wait, watch slowly change. The numbers were the better, sometimes for the worse. Each subtle adjustment was a gamble. Each subtle adjustment was a gamble. Each subtle adjustment, nerve-wracking work. Every time someone from Elvis's entourage walked past, Lily and Gus would freeze, pretending to be innocently checking a light fixture. They were like secret agents on a critical mission, their battlefield a few degrees Fahrenheit. Hours turned into an entire day. Lily didn't leave the floor. She ate a hastily brought-up sandwich, her eyes never leaving her thermometer. She felt the hotel's rhythm, the outside world's temperature fluctuations, and tried to anticipate the effect on room 710. As evening fell and the city lights twinkled outside, a strange, almost smile calm settled over the hotel. Elvis was performing a concert later that night. The suite was quiet, presumably empty. He's gone to the auditorium, Lily whispered, a weary but hopeful note in her voice. Maybe we can get a real fix in now. Gus shook his head. No, darling. Can't mess with it too much. If we change it drastically while he's gone, he'll notice the shift when he comes back. It's got to be seamless, constant, even when he's not there. He sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. This ain't just about making the room comfy when he's in it. It's about making it comfy all the damn time. He expects it to be the same, like clockwork. Lily felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, but also a fierce determination. This wasn't just a challenging task. It was becoming a personal crusade. The king had thrown down the gauntlet, and Lily, the rookie assistant manager, was ready to pick it up. Temperature of Elvis Presley's hotel room became Lily's singular obsession. The hotel's general hum, which once signified a thriving business, now sounded to her like the low growl of the HVAC system, a constant reminder of the unseen battle being waged. Her entire world narrowed down to two numbers: the current temperature in room 710 and the magic number 68.0. She started carrying a small clip-on thermometer everywhere. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat, convinced she'd dreamt of the thermostat reading 72 degrees. She'd sneak out of her small apartment, drive to the hotel, and check her monitoring system. Her pager, which buzzed with any deviation of more than 0.2 degrees, became an extension of her nervous system. Her family called, concerned by her distraction. Her friends wondered why she never went out anymore. "I'm just really busy at work," she'd say vaguely, not wanting to explain that her life revolved around a celebrity's air conditioning. How could she explain the immense pressure of a non-negotiable temperature? To someone who didn't understand the seismic shift a single degree could make in the hotel industry. Gus, the grumpy but surprisingly hetero maintenance man, became her confidant. He was the only one who truly understood the intricacies of their shared mission. He'd bring her lukewarm coffee during her late-night vigils in the maintenance closet, sharing stories of the hotel's past, of plumbing emergencies and power outages. He taught her how to predict the system's moods. "You gotta feel the air, Lily," he'd say, holding a hand up to a vent. "Don't just look at the numbers. Listen to the hum. It'll tell you if it's straining." Lily began to develop an almost intuitive sense for the temperature. She could walk onto the 7th floor and feel a subtle shift in the air, a whisper of a change before her digital thermometer even registered it. She learned to anticipate the afternoon sun's impact, the evening chill, even the slight rise in temperature when the housekeeping staff cleaned to sweet their bodies and opened doors affecting the carefully balanced climate. The real challenge wasn't the big drops or spikes, but the tiny, almost imperceptible shifts that could still trigger a complaint from Elvis's sharp-eyed entourage. They were like bloodhounds, sniffing out any deviation from the sacred 68.0. One morning, the temperature had hovered at 68.3 for less than 5 minutes. Lily had been in a mechanical room with Gus, making a fine-tune adjustment. Her pager had vibrated. Before she could even return to the 7th floor, an urgent call came from Mr. Henderson. "Lily, Mr. Presley's aide just called. He says the room feels a shade too warm." "A shade, Lily. You realize what this means?" Lily had felt a cold dread. "Yes, sir. I'm on it." She rushed up, already instructing Gus to lower the temperature by another whisper-thin increment. When she arrived, the aide was standing by the thermostat, his portable device in hand. It read 68.3. "Mr. Presley is a very sensitive man, Miss Evans," he said, his voice flat. He nearly swallowed. "My apologies, sir. We are calibrating our secondary sensors to ensure absolute precision." It was a momentary fluctuation. The aide simply stared at her, then back at his device. "See that it doesn't happen again." From that moment on, Lily swore to herself that it wouldn't happen again. She spent hours researching HVAC systems, reading dusty manuals, even consulting online forums about climate control. She tried different types of airflow patterns, experimented with the settings on the humidifiers, even considered putting up temporary blackout curtains on the windows during the hottest part of the day. An idea quickly shot down by Mr. Henderson. Her eyes started to look perpetually tired with faint shadows underneath. She survived on caffeine and the adrenaline rush of keeping the temperature stable. She saw Elvis, only once a fleeting glimpse as he left his suite for a show. Surrounded by bodyguards, he was larger than life, a figure of myth and power. And Lily was merely the silent, anonymous guardian of his personal climate. The thought was both daunting and exhilarating. One particularly humid afternoon, a new challenge presented itself. The outside temperature suddenly spiked to over 95 degrees, and the old chillers in the hotel's basement began to struggle. The hum in the ducts grew louder, more strained. Lily watched in horror as the thermometer in Elvis's suite slowly, inexorably began to climb 68.7. "Gus, we're losing it," she cried into her walkie-talkie. "The chillers can't keep up." "I know, darling, I know," Gus's voice was strained. "They're working at max capacity. We need to cool the air before it even gets to the vents." Lily racked her brain. How could she cool the air before entered the suite without it being noticeable? An idea, absurd and desperate, sparked in her mind. "Gus, do we have any dry ice?" A pause. Dry ice for what? "Just tell me if we have any. For keeping the kitchen's frozen goods extra cold, maybe." "Yeah, We got a big block. Why? Meet me upstairs in the maintenance closet with a bucket and some thick gloves and that dry ice, carefully wrapped. Minutes later, Gus arrived, looking bewildered, carrying a large insulated bucket that emitted a wispy white fog. "What in the blue blazes are you thinking, Lily?" "We're going to pre-cool the air," Lily said, her eyes gleaming with a manic determination. "The air comes through this main vent, right before it branches into his room. If we can drop the temperature of that air as it passes even by a degree or two, it'll take less effort for the existing system to bring it down the rest of the way." Gus stared at her, then back at the dry ice, then at the access panel. "You're gonna put dry ice in the ventilation system, just near the intake, Gus. In the bucket, the cold will diffuse. We just need to lower the temperature of the air before it reaches the suite's thermostat. It's a temporary fix, a bridge, until the outside temperature drops. The chillers catch up." Gus let out a long sigh. "Probably," she said, her hands already reaching for the bucket. "But it's either this or we fail. And I'm not failing." They worked quickly, carefully. They rigged a way to suspend the bucket of dry ice near the main intake vent, ensuring it wouldn't fall, but would allow the frigid air to mix with the incoming conditioned air. It was a risky, unconventional maneuver, something completely outside the manual. They retreated, watching the numbers 68.868.7. "Savvy." Lily let out a shaky breath. She didn't realize she'd been holding 68.0 success. "You know, Lily," he said, a rare smile playing on his lips, "you might just be crazier than old Bessie herself. But you got grit. I'll give you that." Lily didn't feel grit. She felt only the profound exhaustion of the battle and the fleeting triumph of another crisis averted. The obsession was complete. She was a silent warrior in the war against fluctuating temperatures, and the king, oblivious in his perfectly cooled sanctuary, was her unwitting sovereign. The day Elvis was scheduled to perform his first concert in Memphis was a whirlwind of activity. The hotel pulsed with a different kind of energy. Anticipation, excitement, and a touch of hysteria. Fans gathered outside hoping for a glimpse of their idol. Journalists swarmed the lobby. Every corner of the city seemed to buzz with Elvis mania. For Lily, the heightened atmosphere only intensified her focus. The dry ice trick with Gus had worked, but it was a temporary solution. She knew she couldn't keep it up indefinitely. The long-term problem of the struggling auxiliary pump still loomed. Gus had ordered to part, but it was on back order, promised sometime next week. This meant constant vigilance. Lily had been in the mechanical room earlier, assisting Gus with some minor adjustments to the main chillers, trying to squeeze every last bit of efficiency out of them. They were old, reliable workhorses, but they were tired. As afternoon turned into evening, the air outside grew heavy and humid. A thick, oppressive blanket settled over the city. Inside room 710, the temperature was a steadfast 68.0. But Lily could feel the system straining. The hum from the vents was just a little louder. The air felt just a fraction less crisp. Around 7 p.m. the call came. Elvis was leaving for the concert venue. Lily hurried to the 7th floor, taking up her usual post near the service elevator. She saw Mr. Henderson in the corridor, looking harried but proud. A few minutes later, the door to the royal suite opened. First the security detail, stern-faced and watchful. Then a figure emerged, larger than life, almost mythical. He was dressed in a dazzling sequin jumpsuit, shimmering under the hotel lights. His hair was perfectly coiffed, his eyes shielded by dark sunglasses. Even from a distance, Lily felt the undeniable presence, the charisma that emanated from him like a palpable force. As he walked past her, surrounded by his entourage, Lily instinctively straightened her uniform, her heart pounding. She caught a fleeting glimpse of his face as he paused for a moment, perhaps to wave at a few lucky fans who had somehow made it onto the floor. His expression, even behind the dark lenses, seemed weary, almost burdened. king was a tireless performer, but the demands must be immense. He descended in the private elevator, and the corridor was suddenly quiet. The silence felt heavy after the burst of energy. Lily took a deep breath, and then her eyes instinctively darted to the thermometer on her cart. Still 68.0, a wave of relief washed over her. He had left and the temperature had held. She wouldn't get a call during his concert, but her relief was short-lived. "Gus, what's happening?" she hissed into her walkie-talkie. Gus's voice was laced with panic. "The main chiller, Lily. She's overheated. Warning lights are flashing down here. She's shutting down." Lily felt a cold dread spread through her. The main chiller, that was the heart of the entire hotel's air conditioning system. If that went down, the entire building would start to warm up, not just Elvis's room. And Elvis was due back in a few hours. "Can you restart it?" Lily asked, her voice tight with fear. "I'm trying, darling. I'm trying. But it's an old system. Might need to cool down before it'll let me." Gus sounded like he was wrestling with a giant, angry machine. Lily could hear grunts and the clang of metal in the background. The thermometer in room 710 continued its ascent. 68.5, 68.8, 69.1. It was happening. The non-negotiable temperature was being negotiated by a failing machine. Lily began to pace the corridor. What could she do? The dry ice was a temporary measure for a struggling auxiliary pump, not a complete system failure. She couldn't just fill the entire suite with dry ice. She tried to think. What had Gus said? The building breathes. It expands and contracts. The outside world was a sauna. She looked at the grand heavy drapes in the suite's windows. They were designed to block light to add to the room's elegance, but they also trapped heat. An idea even more desperate than the dry ice began to form. It was unconventional, risky, and would definitely earn her a reprimand from Mr. Henderson if it didn't work. But she was out of options. She called Gus again. "Gus, how long until the main chiller might be back online? Could be an hour, could be never." "Lily, I don't know. She's acting up bad. 20 minutes to an hour. Elvis would be back in less than 3. She couldn't let the room get much warmer." She made her decision. She unlocked the royal suite door with her master key. Her hands trembling slightly, she stepped inside. The air was noticeably warmer already, no longer the crisp, perfect 68.0. She had so meticulously maintained. The thermostat now read 69.5. She knew she had to act fast. She pulled off her sensible uniform jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. She went to the grand heavy drapes that covered the wall of windows facing the street. With all her strength, she pulled them open, letting in the faint, humid evening light. Then she opened the windows. It was a cardinal sin in hotel management, especially in a luxury suite with central air. But the logic was simple. The air inside was now warmer than 68 degrees. The air outside, while humid, was at least cooler than the room was becoming, and certainly cooler than the stagnant air that was about to rise further as the AC failed entirely. It was a desperate attempt to create cross-ventilation to let some fresh air in, and hopefully to slowly bring the temperature down, or at least stop it from climbing too high too fast. A gust of humid air flowed in, carrying the distant sounds of the city, the faint roar of the crowd from the concert venue. Lily hoped, with every fiber of her being, that this crazy, last-ditch effort wouldn't backfire spectacularly. She checked the thermometer. It was still climbing, albeit slower now, 69.8. Now she just had to pray that Gus could bring the main chiller back to life, and that Elvis wouldn't notice the faint, humid breeze in his perfectly controlled sanctuary. The ultimate test was still to come. Elvis's return. The hours crawled by like a slow, agonizing dream. Lily stayed in the suite, hovering by the open windows, her eyes glued to the digital thermometer. The outside air, though humid, was indeed helping to temper the rising internal heat. Slowly, agonizingly, the numbers started to drop. 69.7. 69.5, 69.3. It wasn't 68, not by a long shot, but it wasn't climbing into the 70s either. Gus called every 15 minutes, his voice a mixture of frustration and determination. Still wrestling with the beast, Lily, she's stubborn. He tried every trick in his book, from tapping recalcitrant pipes with his wrench to muttering curses at the control panel. The main chiller, old and tired, was simply refusing to cooperate. Lily imagined Elvis bathed in sweat under the stage lights, pouring his heart out to thousands of screaming fans. She pictured him stepping off the stage, exhausted but exhilarated, looking forward to the cool, precise comfort of his hotel room. The thought spurred her on. Around 11 p.m., Gus's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie, sounding hoarse but triumphant. "She's breathing, Lily. Main chiller's back online. Slowly, but she's going." A wave of profound relief washed over Lily. "Thank God, Gus. I'm opening all the internal vents now. Let's get that cold air flowing." She moved through the suite, quickly closing the windows, then pulling the heavy drapes shut again, trapping the now cooling air inside. The faint whir of the restarted air conditioning system began to fill the room. A beautiful sound to Lily's ears. The thermometer began to drop more rapidly. Now 69.0, 68.8, 68.5. It was a race against the clock. Just as the digital display flickered to 68.0, Lily heard the distinct sound of the private elevator dinging on their floor. Her heart leaped into her throat. He was back. She quickly exited the suite, trying to look composed as if she hadn't just been battling the elements in the hotel's ancient machinery for hours. She took her place by the service elevator, hands clasped tightly, a nervous smile plastered on her face. Elvis, looking tired but still radiating star power, emerged from the elevator, his entourage surrounding him. He walked slowly towards his suite, his eyes Hisby's. As he passed Lily, she held her breath. He reached his door, and his lead aid opened it for tone. He didn't say anything, didn't glance back, just walked further into the room. The aide followed him in, then paused. Looking out at Lily, he caught her eye. He gave her a single, almost imperceptible nod. The next morning, Lily found herself unexpectedly summoned to Mr. Henderson's office. She braced herself for a lecture about opening the windows in a luxury suite, or perhaps a commendation for her quick thinking. Mr. Henderson sat behind his large desk, looking unusually thoughtful. "Lily," he began, "Mr. Presley's aide had some feedback this morning." Lily's stomach clenched. "Oh," he said. Mr. Henderson continued, a faint smile playing on his lips. "That Mr. Presley had a particularly restful night. He said the room felt just right, and," he leaned forward, lowering his voice. He added a rather curious comment. He said, "Tell your young lady that Elvis appreciates her understanding." "Understanding, Lily? Do you know what he means by that?" Lily was baffled. Understanding she'd just been trying to keep the thermostat at 68? "No, sir, I don't." "I didn't either. Until I pressed him. It seems it's not just about comfort, not just a celebrity quirk." Paused, looking out his window at the bustling Memphis street. "It's about his health." Lily's eyes widened. "His health?" "Yes, he suffers from a condition, a touch of a lung issue. Apparently, nothing serious, but it makes him sensitive to air quality, to sudden changes, temperature. All this time she had seen it as a demanding, almost arbitrary rule, a challenge to her professional capabilities. But it wasn't. It was a deep, personal need. It wasn't about vanity. It was about vulnerability. King, a titan of music, needed a specific temperature to breathe comfortably. "He trusts it," Mr. Henderson added softly. "He trusts that when he walks into that room, it will be his sanctuary. It will be exactly what he needs to recover. It's not a caprice, Lily. It's a necessity." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. The gruff maintenance man, Gus, had hinted at the building's moods, but this was different. This was the king's mood, his very well-being depending on her. Her efforts, her sleepless nights, her desperate measures. They weren't just about meeting a demand. They were about providing solace, about caring for a human being, albeit a famous one in a very fundamental way. The mystery of the non-negotiable 68 degrees had been unveiled, and the truth was far more heartwarming than she could have imagined. It transformed her perception of the entire experience. It wasn't just a job anymore, it was an act of quiet, dedicated service. And Lily, the rookie assistant manager, suddenly felt a deep, almost personal connection to the legendary man, staying just a few floors above her. The revelation about Elvis's health issue changed everything for Lily. The 68-degree demand was no longer an arbitrary, annoying celebrity quirk. It was a deeply personal need, a matter of comfort and well-being for a man who lived under intense public scrutiny. Her job, which had felt like a high-stakes game of keeping a demanding client happy, now felt like a quiet act of care. With this new understanding, Lily's dedication deepened. She spent even more time monitoring the suite's environment, but now with a different mindset. It wasn't just about preventing complaints. It was about providing a sanctuary. She imagined Elvis, away from the roaring crowds, finding genuine peace in the perfectly balanced air she worked so hard to maintain. One afternoon, while checking the suite's temperature, it was, of course, a perfect 68.0. A soft knock came at the door. It was Sally, one of Elvis's personal assistants, a kind-faced woman who always looked a little weary. "Miss Evans," Sally said, her voice gentle. "Mr. Presley asked if we could possibly get him a humidifier. For the room, he finds the air a little dry sometimes after his shows." Lily's heart swelled. She already had one. She had thought of it early on for general comfort, but hadn't mentioned it to the entourage. Not wanting to seem presumptuous, she had kept it discreetly in the closet, ready to deploy. "Of course, Sally," Lily replied, trying to keep her voice professional, but feeling a wave of warmth. "I anticipated that might be helpful. I already have one here, perfectly calibrated for the space. I can set it up right away." Sally's eyes widened slightly. "That's remarkably thoughtful. Most hotels just provide what's asked, not what's anticipated." As Lily set up the humidifier, carefully adjusting its output to add just the right whisper of moisture to the air without making it feel damp, Sally watched her. "I heard it was for his health," Sally sighed, a wistful look on her face. "Yes, and also, in a way, it's nostalgic. He grew up in the South, where the air could be so heavy, so stifling in the summer. When he started making money, he said the first thing he wanted was to be able to breathe easy, to have a place that felt consistently fresh, like a perfect spring morning, even in the middle of August. Not just health, but a longing for a specific feeling, a memory perhaps tied to comfort and peace. It made the 68 degrees even more significant, a symbol of everything he had achieved, and a retreat from the relentless demands of his fame. "He doesn't ask for much, really," Sally continued, glancing towards the bedroom. "Just that little bit of consistency, a place he knows he can come back to, and just be without thinking about anything but relaxing." Lily finished setting up the humidifier, its quiet mist barely visible. "I understand," she said, her voice soft. "I'll make sure it's always just right for him." Over the next few days, Lily continued her meticulous work. The auxiliary pump part finally arrived, and Gus, with Lily's help, spent a grueling afternoon installing it. The system now ran more smoothly, the hum less strained, the temperature more effortless stable. Lily began to see the king in a different light, not just the flamboyant performer, but a man seeking a simple, fundamental comfort amidst the chaos of his life. She started leaving a small handwritten note by the thermostat each morning for the housekeepers. "Please ensure the humidifier setting remains at 3. Temperature 68.0. She even started to intuitively understand the moments when he might need the air, just a touch drier, or a touch more humid, based on his performance schedule and the outside weather. One evening, after a particularly long and energetic show, Elvis returned to the hotel. Lily was on duty, discreetly monitoring. As he entered his suite, the door remained ajar for a moment. Lily, unseen, caught a glimpse of him. He walked directly to the thermostat, something he hadn't done before. His hand hovered over it for a moment, not to adjust it, but almost as if to confirm its reading. Then he simply sighed a sound of deep contentment and walked further into the room. It was a small gesture, but for Lily it was a huge validation. He knew, he sensed it. He appreciated the invisible, constant effort. He understood that someone was meticulously ensuring his personal sanctuary was perfect. The interaction was indirect, but it forged a connection. Lily wasn't just a hotel employee anymore. She was part of the intricate web of people who helped keep Elvis Presley, the man, grounded and comfortable amidst the whirlwind of Elvis Presley, the legend. It was more than just a job now. It was a mission of care, a quiet promise to provide that unwavering constancy for a man who desperately needed it. The non-negotiable 68 degrees was no longer a burden. It was a privilege, a secret language between her dedication and his comfort. The Memphis Grand Hotel was preparing for Elvis's final concert in the city, the culmination of his residency. The air was electric with anticipation, but for Lily it was also thick with a growing sense of foreboding. The weather forecast had been grim for days. A major storm predicted to hit right around the time of the concert, bringing torrential rain and high winds. Lily had spent the morning triple-checking everything. The new auxiliary pump was running smoothly, the main chiller was humming along, and room 710 was a pristine, perfect 68.0 degrees. But a storm of this magnitude could bring power outages, system overloads, or worse. Gus, his face grimmer than usual, had been down in the mechanical room reinforcing supports, checking backup generators, and preparing for the worst. "Old Bessie doesn't like storms, Lily," he'd warned her. "She gets rattled." As evening approached, the sky turned an ominous, bruised purple. The wind began to howl, rattling the windows. Rain started first, a drizzle, then a relentless downpour. The hotel staff moved with a quiet urgency, securing everything, readying for impact. At 7:30 p.m., Elvis left for the concert, stepping into a waiting car amidst a flurry of umbrellas and security personnel. The last thing Lily heard as the door closed was the faint, excited roar of the crowd, quickly swallowed by the rising wind. Just 15 minutes later, as the storm intensified, the hotel plunged into darkness. A collective gasp rose from the lobby. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie orange glow over everything. "Power outage!" Mr. Henderson's voice boomed over the emergency intercom. "Generators are kicking in." "Stay calm, everyone." Lily's heart leaped into her throat. "Gus, the power!" "I know, darling." The main grid went out. Backup. Generators are firing up, but it's going to take a minute for the HVAC system to stabilize after the surge. Gus's voice was strained, punctuated by the roar of the wind outside. Lily raced to the 7th floor. She opened the door to the royal suite. The emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows. Her portable thermometer, thank goodness, had battery power. She held it up, 68.0 for now. But she could already feel the faint telltale change in the air. The hum of the AC was gone. The room was unnervingly silent. "The AC's off, Gus," Lily cried, into the walkie-talkie. "I know, the generators power 3 essential services. Lights, elevators, kitchen, papas. Till we get full grid restored. And old Bessie takes a while to spool back up, anyway." Even with full power, Lily paced, her mind racing. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If the AC didn't come back online quickly, the room temperature would start to climb fast. She knew Gus was doing everything he could, but what if the generators couldn't restart after such a jolt? She had to do something. She had to improvise. She thought of every trick she'd learned from Gus, every crazy idea she'd had. The dry ice, the open windows. What else? How could she keep this suite cool manually, without any power for hours? Suddenly, she remembered the enormous ice machine near the service entrance on their floor used for guest services. And the bar, it was still working on emergency power for now. And the hotel had a massive supply of ice, usually for drinks and room service. An idea completely outlandish formed in her mind. It was desperate. It was crazy, but it might just work. Can you send up some large, industrial-strength garbage bins, the ones with wheels? Garbage bins, Lily? What in tarnation for? I'm trying to restart the whole damn hotel here. Trust me, Gus. And send someone from the kitchen with all the ice they can spare quickly. Within minutes, a few bewildered kitchen staff members arrived, pushing carts piled high with bags of ice. Gus, still muttering, had sent up 2 huge, clean garbage bins on wheels. "All right," Lily instructed, taking charge. "We're going to make a giant makeshift air conditioner." She directed the staff to empty the bags of ice into the large bins. Steam rose from the rapidly melting ice, chilling the air around them. "Now, bring these into the suite, and quickly, quietly." The kitchen staff, looking confused but obedient, wheeled the heavy bins into the royal suite. The air in the room was already at 69.2 degrees. "Now, strategically place them," Lily directed, pointing to corners near the main air vents, "and one near the large windows. Cold air, being heavier, will sink. We need to create a convection current, a natural flow of cool air across the room." It was simple physics, but applied on a grand, almost ridiculous scale. The large bins of ice were like giant passive radiators, slowly bleeding cold into the air. "We also need fans," Lily announced, scanning the dark room. "Small battery-operated ones, if we have them, even hand fans." A moment later, a few maintenance staff members who had heard the commotion appeared with a couple of small battery-operated fans from storage. Lily placed them strategically near the ice bins, aiming them to gently circulate the cold air. It was far from perfect. The room wouldn't be precisely 68 degrees. It might be 69 or even 70, but it wouldn't climb higher, and it would provide a consistent, albeit makeshift, source of cool air. Lily moved through the suite, checking the subtle airflow, adjusting the fans, wiping away the small puddles that formed around the melting ice bins. She didn't know how long this would last, but she was going to fight for every degree. She imagined Elvis, drenched in sweat, belting out "Suspicious Minds," oblivious to the frantic, icy battle being waged in his hotel room, and she was determined that when he returned exhausted, he would find at least some semblance of the sanctuary she had promised him. This wasn't about a demanding star anymore. It was about an act of deep personal kindness. The hours dragged on in the ice-filled royal suite. The storm raged outside. The hotel generators groaned, and Lily moved like a silent shadow, checking the ice levels, adjusting the fans, and constantly monitoring the temperature. It hovered between 69.5 and 70 degrees. Not 68, but remarkably cool. Given the circumstances, the makeshift system was working. Around 1 a.m., the sound of the private elevator announced Elvis's return. Lily quickly retreated, taking her usual post in the hallway, trying to look calm, despite her racing heart and the dampness clinging to her uniform. Elvis emerged, looking utterly exhausted. He moved slowly, his jumpsuit clinging to him with sweat. The powerful charisma was still there, but muted, replaced by a deep weariness. His aide, the same impeccably dressed man, opened the suite door. Elvis stepped inside. Lily held her breath, her eyes fixed on his reaction. He paused. His shoulders, which had been slumped, seemed to straighten slightly. He took a deep breath and then another. Lily watched as his eyes, even behind the dark lenses, scanned the room. His gaze landed on the large industrial garbage bins filled with ice. emitting faint wisps of vapor. Strategically placed near the vents and windows, he saw the small battery-operated fans whirring quietly. For a long moment, he simply stared at them. A flicker of surprise, then something else crossing his face, a dawning realization, then he turned. His dark sunglasses, usually an impenetrable barrier, seemed to hold a new depth as he looked directly at Lily. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The gratitude in his posture, the slight incline of his head, was unmistakable. He knew. He understood. Then, to Lily's utter astonishment, he slowly, deliberately removed his sunglasses. His eyes in the dim emergency lighting were a startlingly clear blue. They were tired, but there was a profound appreciation in them as they met hers. He held her gaze for a moment, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. He then gave her a small, gentle nod. Not the curt professional nod of his aide, but a personal, heartfelt one. It was a silent thank you, a moment of profound connection between the legendary star and the dedicated young woman who had gone to extraordinary lengths for his comfort. He then turned back to the room, and his aide closed the door behind him. Lily stood there, stunned. He had seen her. He had understood her efforts. He had even removed his sunglasses, a gesture of unexpected intimacy from a man who meticulously guarded his public image. The weariness of the night, the stress of the storm, the hours of frantic improvisation, all melted away, replaced by a profound sense of warmth and validation. The next morning, the storm had passed. The main power grid was fully restored. Old Bessie the HVAC system purred contentedly, and room 710 was back to a perfect 68.0. The ice bins had been quietly removed. The suite returned to its pristine condition. Lily was exhausted but buoyed by the memory of that silent exchange. She was just starting her shift when she received a call from Mr. Henderson's office. "Lily, Mr. Presley's aide just departed," he said, his voice unusually soft. "He asked me to convey a message to you personally." Lily braced herself, remembering the slight humidity from the makeshift cooling. "He said," Mr. Henderson continued, a note of genuine awe in his voice, "that last night Mr. Presley felt that his room was the closest it has ever been. He said it was exactly what he needed, and he made a point of mentioning your ingenuity." Lily felt a blush creep up her neck. "Yes, he also says that Mr. Presley's specific at a bonus be added to your next paycheck, a substantial one. And," Mr. Henderson added, his voice dropping slightly, "he said that if Mr. Presley ever returns to Memphis, he would specifically request that you, and only you, be in charge of his suite's arrangements. It wasn't just a bonus, it was a personal endorsement from the king. It was recognition not just of her effort, but of her understanding, her care, her commitment to something beyond the surface demands." Lily stammered out her thanks to Mr. Henderson. As she hung up the phone, a profound sense of accomplishment settled over her. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a calling. She had met the king's non-negotiable demand, not with just technical skill, but with empathy and a true act of kindness when all else failed. And in doing so, she had found her own non-negotiable commitment to her work. A passion for understanding the human needs behind the demands, no matter how famous the person making them. Elvis Presley departed from the Memphis Grand Hotel a few days later, amidst the usual fanfare, screaming fans and flashing cameras. For Lily, his departure marked the end of an intense quatre period in her life. The hotel slowly returned to its normal hum, but for Lily nothing was quite the same. The royal suite, room 710, felt different now. It was no longer just a luxurious space. It held the echoes of her frantic battles, her sleepless nights, and the quiet triumph of keeping the king's sanctuary perfectly temperate. The memory of Elvis's grateful gaze, the silent nod, and the unexpected removal of his sunglasses were etched in her mind. The bonus in her paycheck was substantial, a tangible reward, but it was the personal recognition, the understanding of why the 68 degrees mattered. That was the true treasure. Lily found herself a changed manager. She approached every guest request, no matter how small, with a newfound depth of consideration, She no longer saw demands. She saw needs. She continued to work closely with Gus, who now regarded her with a mixture of respect and grudging affection. "You're all right, Lily," he grumbled, handing her a wrench. "You figured out that sometimes an old dog just needs a young trick or two." They had formed an unlikely but strong bond, two guardians of the hotel's unseen heart. Gus even started calling her the temperature whisperer. The story of the non-negotiable 68 degrees became a legend within the hotel. But now, with a new twist. The old-timers who used to scoff at celebrity demands now spoke of Lily's dedication with a quiet admiration. Mr. Henderson, usually so reserved, sometimes recounted the tale to new hires, emphasizing not just the importance of meeting guest expectations, but of understanding the person behind them. Years passed. She was promoted, eventually becoming the head of guest relations, then assistant general manager. She trained new staff, always emphasizing the story of Elvis and the 68 degrees. It wasn't just a number, she'd explain to eager young managers. It was his peace, his recovery, his connection to a simple comfort he craved amidst a life that was anything but simple. Your job isn't just to provide a service, it's to anticipate, to understand, and to care. Room 710 remained the royal suite, always impeccably maintained. While Elvis Presley never returned to Memphis after that residency, the legend of his non-negotiable temperature persisted. Other celebrities came and went with their own unique demands, but Lily faced each one with the lessons she had learned from the king. She learned that true hospitality wasn't just about luxurious amenities or flawless service. It was about seeing the humanity in every guest, understanding their unspoken needs, and going above and beyond to provide a sense of security and comfort. It was about anticipating a need for a humidifier, or making ice bins into a makeshift AC when all else failed. One quiet afternoon, years later, Lily found herself standing in room 710. It was empty, awaiting its next guest. She walked over to the thermostat, still displaying the precise 68.0 degrees. She ran her hand over the cool, smooth surface. She could almost hear the faint, contented hum of the system, a sound that had once filled her with dread, but now brought a sense of deep satisfaction. She thought of Elvis, the legend, the icon. But she also thought of Elvis, the man who needed a particular temperature to breathe, easy to rest, to find a moment of peace. She smiled. Her brief, intense mission had not only saved a valuable hotel account, but it also profoundly shaped her. The non-negotiable temperature wasn't a burden, it was a gift. It had taught her the true meaning of service, of empathy, and of the quiet, powerful impact that a simple act of genuine care could have even on a king. And that, Lily knew, was a legacy far more valuable than any number on a thermometer. It was a heartwarming story that would continue to inspire her and those she mentored for the rest of her career.